Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you pursued playing professional sports, or even forget about playing a sport professionally? Have you ever wondered how your social or dating life would be different if you played more team sports growing up? Well, if that's you, you'll want to tune into this week's episode of the Inner Confidence Podcast, where I interview Dre Baldwin on how he became a professional basketball player after only playing at the Division III level in college. His secret wasn't so much in becoming the best athlete, it was more about creatively marketing himself and getting noticed, which is a skill we all need to have in our dating and social life.
You're listening to the Inner Confidence Podcast, home to the social funnel method. My name is Robbie Kramer. I've been a coach since 2007, and I've helped over 1,300 digital nomads, expats, and remote workers build an amazing social and dating life abroad. My mission is simple: to help you position yourself to meet stunning women and make awesome friends en route to becoming the most confident and attractive version you can be. I have an intense hatred for fluff and useless advice that you can't take action on, so tune in each week to learn the most effective and implementable strategies to level up your game. So stick around, let's go.
Dre, so tell us your story. How did you become, such a aspirational leader? I want to hear all about your college experience and becoming a pro basketball player and all the trials and tribulations.
Well, thank you for the nested compliment there. I think, Robbie, how it started, I come from the city of Philadelphia, now based in Miami, Florida. I always played sports growing up, dabbled in a little bit of a few things, but got to basketball about age 14, which is pretty late if you're trying to go somewhere in the sport, like play in college or play pro. So I only played 1 year of high school ball, sat the bench the 1 year I was on the team. Tell people I had a front row seat to all the games right there on the bench. And then walked on to play college ball at a Division III school. And I did play, but it's Division III. So anybody who knows sports, Division III is just the third tier. So the players that you see on TV, those are the Division I guys. That's usually the ones who become pros. Some of those guys become pros. So Division III, no chance. So getting out of college, nobody was checking for me to play at the next level. And I didn't play my first year out of college. My first year, I worked a couple of quote-unquote regular jobs. I worked at Foot Locker as an assistant manager. I worked at a gym called Valley Total Fitness selling memberships. And then the year removed after graduation, and this is 2005, by the way. I graduated 2004. So in 2005, I went to this event called an exposure camp, which, again, people in the sports world know about those. But for those who don't, an exposure camp is like a job fair for athletes. And in team sports, they're a big deal because this is where you can go if you believe you're good enough for an opportunity at the next level, because they have these in high school and college these days now too. But you believe you're good enough for an opportunity at the next level, but you don't yet have that opportunity. You go there to basically prove by your performance that you are good enough. So This is, as I just described, this is not a place you wear a suit and hand out resumes. You actually bring your sneakers and you play. And I did pretty well at that event.
Who is scouting there, just like the coaches of pro teams, or
right, so it's all the decision makers. So you have coaches, you have agents, you have managers, team owners, and all of those people, they come to these as destination events. So every summer, because basketball season is from the fall to the spring, so the summer is the off season. So every summer, these events happen all over. There are a bunch of them in the United States, and there are many that actually happen in Europe or other countries where you might want to play. And players travel to these events on our own dime for the opportunity to prove that we're good enough to play pro. There's no guarantee anything's going to happen, but you're basically giving yourself a shot. So that's how I got into pro basketball. I played pretty well at that event. I leveraged my performance to get with an agent. That agent helped me get my first job. So that's how I started playing pro ball. And this is, again, the fall, late summer, early fall 2005. And I took the footage from that performance, Robbie, and I put that footage on this brand new website. It said you can put up as much video as you want. It's called youtube.com. And that's where I started to build a brand online, because nobody recognizes me in the street because I played professional basketball in Europe, because most Americans don't watch professional basketball in Europe. And everybody watches YouTube. So people know me from YouTube. So that's where I started to build my name. And it wasn't until several years later I started to put content out, not as that wasn't some big marketing scheme that I had from the beginning. I just put the video up because I needed a place to save the footage, because the footage was on this thing called a VHS tape. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I put the footage on YouTube, because I didn't want to lose the VHS and lose that footage. So I just
Right.
put it on YouTube. The internet, I think, will be around. I made a bet, and 20 years later, I was right. And what happened is ball
And you
players started
graduated
finding.
in 05, right?
I graduated in 04. Stopped playing in 05.
I graduated, well, I should have graduated in 05, but I did the, red shirt freshman year. So I graduated in 06. So I guess we're about the same age.
Yes, roughly. Yeah. So
what made you want to basically, you were just putting the stuff on YouTube as your own database of footage, or did you kind of
one video? I only just put one video on YouTube.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Myself. Yeah. And then I ended up putting a couple more when I got this little $100 camera, because this is before you had the video cameras on our phones. So I put a couple more up there, but again, it was just for me. It wasn't like I was trying to show off. It was just for me. But since there were so few people publishing on YouTube, but there were people looking, some people found the video and they would leave comments like, "Hey, who are you? Who do you play for? How often do you practice?" So I realized that there was an audience of people who wanted to learn basketball, and I guess they had chosen me as someone who could teach them because I looked like I knew what I was doing. Yep. So that's when I realized, I can make more of these, and I can kind of pay it forward to this next generation of players, because they were just like me. They want to play, but they don't have anyone to teach them. The difference is they could go to the internet and get information, whereas in our generation, there was no one around to teach you. You were just out of luck.
Right.
So I decided I would put videos up every now and then. It wasn't like I just dropped everything and said I'm going to be a YouTuber, because who cares about YouTube in 2007, 2008? There's no money to be made. There's no such thing as social media. There's no such thing as content, and there's no such thing as an influencer. So who cares? Right? There was nothing to get from it. It wasn't, but I did put the videos out just sporadically. Robbie, this is what I did. So every once in a while, every 6 weeks, every month, I would have footage. I would let it sit on my computer for months before I got around to it, because again, who cares? Yeah. So it wasn't until about 2009, 2010 when I found myself in between jobs in basketball. The phone wasn't ringing, wasn't sure it was going to ring again. And I was asking myself, how can I get more control over things where I can combine basketball, the internet, and making money together? Now, it sounds pretty simple now talking about it, but back then it was a novel idea.
Right.
All right, now I'm going to invest in building this brand that we now call building a personal brand. And that's when I started writing more articles. I had a website at the time, so I started putting more content on my website. I started putting videos out every day because YouTube was purchased by Google. And now they started sending me emails like, "Hey, you have some popular videos. If you click this button, you can monetize the video, and now you'll make a little bit of money off your videos getting viewed." So I said, okay, well, I'm not making any money from basketball at this moment. How about I make some money from YouTube? So that's when I started to focus on it a little bit more, actually a lot more. And luckily, the phone did ring again. So by the time the phone rang again, now I had two jobs. I was a professional athlete, and I was this online thing that we now call an influencer. So I had both of those going at the same time, and also started creating my own products, training programs for basketball players. Eventually started writing books about a year after that, and that's when kind of all this stuff started to begin. Shorten up the story when we fast forward here. So when I started talking about mindset, was the basketball players who were following me started asking about it, because they were getting all the on the court tools. I was teaching them, here's how you work on dribbling. Here's how you shoot. Here's how you move your feet to do this move. Here's how you can jump higher to dunk the basketball. They were getting all that, but they were coming to me with an additional problem. Robbie, and they were saying, "Dre, what about the mindset piece of this?"
Right.
Because they heard about my background of D3, played in high school 1 year, walked on D3, but he still made it pro. Now, what's the mindset behind somebody who would do that?
Right.
And they understood that they needed the mindset piece to take these physical tools and actually make them work when it mattered. So that's when I started talking about mindset, and I started doing a video every week, every Monday. This video called the Weekly Motivation. And I would just talk some mindset piece. It was just a little 2 to 5 minute selfie video before selfie videos were a thing on my, again, cheap $100 camera. And I would just talk about things like discipline and confidence and mental toughness and being ready for your next opportunity and how to be ready to compete. And I was talking about it for the ball players, but I wasn't just talking about sports. I was just talking about it in general, in a general sense. And the players appreciated it, but also what happened was, and this is a pivotal moment for me, people who were not athletes started noticing those videos. And they would say to me, "Dre, I'm not a basketball player. I'm not even interested in basketball, but I like your mindset approach. I like the way you talk about that." And that told me that everybody could benefit from the mindset piece, even though I was using basketball or sports as a frame.
Right.
The actual material was useful outside of the sports realm. And I had always been interested in stepping outside of the sports realm after I was done playing. I knew I wasn't going to become a coach or a trainer. That wasn't me. I said, I'm going to play, and if I'm not playing, I'm not involved, and which is exactly what I did. So when I stopped playing in 2015, I already had this momentum of a brand being built. I already had courses, I had books, I had products, I had a framework called Work on Your Game, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I had an audience of people, not only athletes, but also non-athletes who were interested in my stuff because they liked my approach from everything outside of the actual on-the-court basketball stuff. So that's what I've been doing full-time ever since I stopped playing in 2015.
Amazing. I have so many questions and different things I want to pick your brain on because we have a similar story. I was a golfer in college, thought about turning pro, realized that I didn't quite have the skills, but mainly I really didn't have the mindset. And at the time, there was no, in 2006, there was no like, basically you got lessons from a local pro or that was it, right? Or you had to find the best pro you could. You couldn't go on YouTube. You couldn't find out. I had no idea what my swing looked like because we didn't have video cameras to really record slow motion. And so I just basically, just kind of gave it up. But then I, got obsessed with dating and kind of did the similar thing to you, is got on YouTube, started making videos and became an influencer before it was really a thing. I guess I didn't even know I was being an influencer, but the main thing, like this podcast is called the Inner Confidence Podcast because I saw so many crossovers in life and dating, also with sports. And one of the things I've noticed, which is really profound, most of the guys who come to me for help with their confidence and their dating skills, most of them did not play organized team sports growing up. And I played ice hockey before I played golf and a little bit of soccer and whatnot, but golf was more of an individual sport. A lot of the guys who come to me, maybe they played chess or they played more of like the introverted, a little bit more heady analytical sports. And is there any sort of takeaways that you see? Obviously, I think basketball, being in that locker room, hanging out with the other guys, I think that has a huge impact on some of the social skills and the hierarchy chains that are developed in those environments. So that was kind of my first question is, was that experience for you playing organized team sports growing up, like a big confidence builder? How did that affect your social skills?
That's a good question. I never thought about it. I never really considered if it was affecting my social skills, but I'm pretty sure it does. I mean, it's one of the reasons why parents like to put their young kids into sports because, well, one thing is kids have a ton of energy. So you want to get them to do something so they're not tearing up the house or causing trouble in the streets. So it's one reason you put them in sports, but also, especially with young males, we tend to have a lot of energy and we tend to let that energy out physically. So put them in sports so they can find a positive outlet for that energy. And then if you're playing a team sport, then of course you have to engage with the other players on the team. So you have to learn, get in where you fit in. You have to learn to respect the authority of the coaches who are in charge. And you have to learn how to work with the other kids in some type of cooperative way. I mean, similar to what you would do if you're in school. So I think it does help your social skills in the sport because it's about performance. You learn about winning and losing. You learn about learning how to take your wins and your losses with humility. So there's a lot of things you learn socially in dealing in sports, but I never really thought about it that much until I got to talking about it right now.
When you decided to go pro, what did the guys on your team say? Were they like giving you shit about that? Like, come on, man, we're D3. What are you going to really do with that? Because obviously you had to have a really strong mindset to believe that you could succeed and to basically make it during that exposure camp and whatnot. And the principles you teach, I'm sure, are a big part of that. Can you walk me through some of those and how that?
So to answer your first question, it was not like you have a press conference, right? When you had a D3 and you decide you're going to play pros. So not a whole bunch of people cared. So I just had it in my mind that I wanted to play pro ball after college. And many players who play college basketball, if you ask every active college basketball player now, do you think you could play pro basketball after this? A lot of them would say yes. A lot of them will say they think that they can. Now, are they actually going to take any steps to get there? Most of them will not. And that's where you start to separate. So it wasn't like I made an announcement that I was going to go play pro. It was just that I had it in my head and I was going to do it. But then you don't actually start taking the steps until school is over, right? It's not like you start while you're still in school. So the players who I played with in college, I knew that most of them didn't have this mindset. There were a handful of us, and when I say handful, like I can count on one hand, maybe 2 or 3 of us who seriously thought we could play pro to the point that we were willing to do things like pay money to go to an exposure camp, because you have to pay to go to these events. It's not like they fly you out there. You got to go, and it's your money.
Before we continue with the episode, if you're going out and getting numbers and want to improve your texting so more of those numbers convert to dates, check out my texting course. It will teach you the psychology of digital communication, which is surprisingly polar opposite in almost every way compared to live interactions. What works in person doesn't work in text, so this is almost always the area that men are making easily correctable mistakes that they're totally unconscious of. My course will optimize your texting, which is a skill you really need to master, and the best part is you can cut and paste your way to mastery. You can find the link in the description. It costs less than a round of drinks. And if you're going on dates and want to learn what to do so more of them end up in your bedroom, check out my free dating protocol. You'll learn to be an interesting guy to talk to, even if you're serious or over analytical. How to help a girl open up on a date, why talking about sex is a big taboo on dates if you want to get laid, and what to talk about instead, going from the first touch to the first kiss, how to invite her over to your place, and why you should skip 80% of the physical escalation moves you're doing back at your place. The link to this free guide is in the description. Out of all the guys I know, the only ones who manage to consistently land 8s and up are the guys who have built a social circle. You can certainly approach women and use the apps to get laid, but those strategies simply don't really work on top tier women. Think about it. She's hot, she has hot friends. And hot girls get invited to high status events almost every single night. So when it comes time to get ready for your date, do you think she's gonna show up or flake last minute when her girlfriend texts her to come to some awesome thing? As if she's gonna choose the random dude on Hinge or the guy who chased her down on the street over her social circle. No chance. If you're getting tons of flakes, this is the reason. But for most guys, the idea of building a social circle, especially if you're traveling or in a new city, can feel overwhelming. So they continue to hunt for women in their usual ways, and they end up settling for a girl they were never really that excited about in the first place. To avoid this fate, join our community of aspiring international playboys and instantly plug into a highly vetted social circle of cool dudes to network and navigate your journey with. You already know it's hard to find a wingman because the good ones don't really stay in the game very long. They get married, life goes on, right? Many of our members travel together, they end up living together, and they build amazing social circles in the best kept secret locations around the globe with gorgeous women and low cost of living. I'm extremely careful who I let into this community, but if you feel like you'd make a good fit, you can learn more about the social funnel method to consistently land top tier women and apply to join our community. The link is in the description. Now let's get back to the show. They have that in golf too. It's called Q School, and it's not cheap. It's like $5,000 just to sign up, and you go and you got to play multiple stages, multiple rounds. And if you make it, a very slim chance, then you get, your tour card or your lower tour card. But that's interesting. I didn't know that they had that for basketball as well. So
yeah, exactly. It's getting bigger now. It wasn't that big then, but it's getting bigger now even at different levels. So one thing that I did know about my teammates, most of my teammates who I played with in college, was that they didn't see themselves as anything other than what we were, which is you're playing Division III sports, and many athletes at the Division III level, you play Division II where the players could be a little bit more serious. But at Division III level, a lot of the players are playing just because, okay, I happen to be on this campus and I'm just good enough to be on the sports team, so I'll play. But had they been in a Division I school, they wouldn't even try out for the team. They'd be perfectly fine playing a club sport or intramurals or just playing for fun. These people are not aspiring, not anymore. They're not aspiring anymore. So I knew that was their mentality. And sometimes they would get talked about, but for the most part, these players weren't. It wasn't even worth talking to them about the future because they didn't see one for themselves when it came to sports. So for me, what was the rest of your question?
Oh, it was basically like, how did you take the sort of the principles that you talk about and that confidence, the mindset, how did you basically use that to, propel yourself into the pros? I was just curious of like, what were those things that were really paramount that you think you had in your brain that other people didn't, that allowed you to succeed at that level?
Great question. Number one answer is my ability to market and sell myself. That was the biggest thing, because I think a lot of people would think, okay, well, you obviously had to work hard on your game and you had to get really good and have the ability on the court. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And the way I explain it, Robbie, is that yes and. So the way I explain it, Robbie, is that if you're going to play a professional sport, and I'm assuming this applies in golf the same way it does in basketball, but I'll speak from the basketball perspective, there's a baseline of physical ability you must have. Right. In terms of your ability to run, jump, big, strong, fast. Can you dribble, shoot? Can you keep up with other players who are at the pro level? There's a baseline physical level. You have to be above this line. So anyone who's below this line, forget about it. Those are most of my teammates at the D3 level. That's why they didn't even consider themselves as even a potential pro player, because they knew they physically couldn't keep up. But then when you have the players who are above this line, you may have, let's say, 50,000 men who are above that line physically. But worldwide, there are about 4,000 to 5,000 jobs available for an American-born man to play professional basketball, which means out of all the men who physically have the capability to play pro, only 1 out of every 10 is going to get their chance.
Right.
And mind you, remember, every year, it's not like every player who's playing now is getting kicked out and we replace all 5,000. You're only replacing a small percentage of them. A bunch of them are keeping their jobs. So a very small percentage of people who have the ability are going to get the chance. I realized this while I was still in college. And I thought to myself, okay, am I going to be able to just physicality and talent my way to this opportunity? The answer is probably no, because if I was that physically talented, I probably would be playing D1.
Interesting.
Right? I knew I had some physical capability, but it wasn't like blow you out the water capability.
And were you spending a ton of time, in the gym, on the court, putting in the reps? Like, what was your ratio, I guess, of like practice time to work on the physical ability versus the other guys that you saw that were kind of playing at that level that you wanted to get to?
Compared to my Division III teammates?
Or I guess compared to your teammates, and also compared to like D1 players.
It's funny. I'm glad you asked that question. So when it comes to my Division III teammates, it was like 100 to 1. These guys didn't practice. Right. They were on the basketball court when the coach required us to be on the court. So if we had practice, they were at practice. But if you came to the gym, and we had one gym, if you came to the gym and there was nothing scheduled just to use the court to work on your game or to lift weights or anything like that, I never saw any of my teammates. I had 1 or 2 teammates who would practice on their own. Actually, I had one teammate who would practice on his own, and then we were friends with another teammate. He would come with us. If we practiced, he would come with us, but he would never do it on his own volition. It's me and one other guy. We would do it on our own volition. And then the lifting weights, I never saw any of those guys in the weight room. So with my D3 level guys, answer is actually infinity, because you can't divide by 0, right? None, 0. And when it came to the Division I guys, and we knew a good number of them because there were a lot of colleges in the area where I went to school. I went to Penn State, Altoona, by the way.
Oh, nice.
In the middle of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you would think, right, that these guys are supposed to be better than us, 2 levels above us, that they just practice more than us and no wonder that they're better. That's actually not the case, because at the collegiate level, mind you, people go to college at age 18. And when you get a scholarship or you end up slotted D1, D2, D3 coming out of high school is not based on how hard you work, really. It's just based on your precociousness. How much talent and potential have you shown up through high school? So if your dad played sports and he taught you everything, then you're probably going to show good enough to be a Division I player. If you have the genetics, and you may end up basically plateauing in college because you're really not that good. You think somebody like, all due respect, like Michael Jordan's kids, were they really that good? Not really.
Right.
But they had Michael Jordan as a dad, so they at least had a teacher at home, right? They had a coach in the house. So they could at least show enough ability that they're going to get some opportunity. Now, if you had nothing, you had nobody teaching you like you or like me, then we had to kind of hustle our way. And if you didn't show that much, then you end up D3, D2. So what I found out when I started to engage these D1 guys, that many of them, they just had more physical capability, more talent, but were they actually working harder? The answer is hell no, absolutely not. They were not. It's not that they didn't practice, but it's not like they were doing something that was so amazing that you were like, oh, wow, no wonder they're D1. No, they're D1 because they're just a little bit taller. They're a little bit more physicality. They can run a little bit faster. Their reaction time's quicker. They just had genetics that you can't work. You can't work your way to those kind of genetics. That's what it was.
Got it. So your plan was did you have a plan to I'm going to out practice those guys and I'm going to beat them,
No, you didn't. Okay, so you weren't really thinking about that.
I wasn't going to out practice them. I was going to out market and sell them because I knew most athletes, all they wanted to do was just play, and they just figured their playing would be enough. I knew my playing would not be enough. So I said, what else can I do?
Interesting. So you feel like you kind of maxed out your abilities, and then you're like, what else can I do on a marketing side?
Well, I hadn't maxed out as far as how good I could become. The thing is, Robbie, remember I told you 50,000 guys who think they can play and only 5,000 get the job. So I'm thinking, what is a decision maker thinking? They're not going to look at me and say, okay, Dre, we just got to get him because he's just so good. It was, what can I do is going to get me the attention of the decision makers that these other players are not going to do, because most of them just want to get on the court and they want that to be enough. I said, I'm going to get on the court and do what I need to do. I went to the exposure camp. I did what I need to do, but what else am I going to do after the exposure camp is going to get me the attention of the people who can help me that these other players are not going to do, because the rest of them are just going to play and then they're just going to sit there and say, okay, somebody call me and sign me. I said, I'm going to take some steps to make them notice me and sign me. That was a differentiator.
Got it. Yeah. So tell me about those. What were the steps? How'd you figure those out?
Great question. So at the time, go back in the story. So 2005, I go to the exposure camp. It's in Orlando, Florida. Me and a couple of teammates from college, we rented a car in Philly. We drove to Orlando. That's about 19 hours. We drive to Orlando, go to exposure camp. It's 2 days, Saturday, Sunday. I played pretty well. Go back home. I need to be back at work on Monday. I negotiated with my boss at Valley Total Fitness to get the weekend off. So I get back to Philly on Monday, drove back from Orlando, go back to work. Now, I needed an agent because I played well at the exposure camp, but mind you, I did not sign a contract at the camp. So the summer of 2005, I played good at the camp. I paid to go to it, but I'm not signed. I'm still unsigned, out of college, but not a pro basketball player. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to get an agent because I'm going to play overseas. It's not like the Knicks or the Lakers is checking for me. I'm going to play overseas. I've never been out of the country. So I don't know anybody overseas. Who knows somebody overseas? This is the way I'm thinking. I figured, okay, an agent has connections overseas. That's literally what they do. They help American players go play overseas. So I need an agent. Now, coming from this exposure camp, there are two key things that you wanted to get from the camp. One is a scouting report. That's a third-party person with credibility saying, I watched this guy play, and here's his strengths, here's his weaknesses. This guy can play pro, he can't, whatever. I got a good scouting report. That was online. So I had a link to the scouting report. The other thing is you get the footage. That was the VHS tape, right? So I started reaching out to agents. So I went online. Google did exist at this time. And I just Googled basketball agents. Any agent I found who had a email address or a phone number, I reached out to them directly. Straight up cold calling. I cold called 60 basketball agents. Literally on the phone, cold called. They didn't know me, were not expecting me. I just told them, here's who I am. At this point, I had collateral because people may be wondering, well, Dre, why'd you do this the year before when you got out of school? Well, I didn't have anything to offer except just talking. Now I had a scouting report and the footage. So I called them and said, I'll send you a link to my scouting report and I will send you the footage. Now, again, VHS tape. This is not a YouTube link. I had to make copies of the tape. So I had a VCR.
VCRs to record side by side, right?
I had a double-decker VCR. So any Gen Zers listening to this and don't know what we're talking about, then Google this or ask your parents, and they'll tell you what this is. So I had a double-decker VCR at home. And I would go to this drugstore called Eckerd. I don't know if they still exist. And I would buy blank VHS tapes, and I would make copies of that master tape, and I would mail those out to the agents that asked to see it. So I called 60. I spoke to 20. They said, let me see what you got. I mailed 20 tapes out. Out of that 20, one of them finally got back in touch with me and said, I'll represent you. He signed me. He got me my first contract. That's how I got in.
Amazing. Yeah, that's straight cold calling, guerrilla marketing, whatever you want to call it. That's
grassroots. Yeah.
So once you had the agent, he found you, a job overseas and
correct.
Got it. And then, okay, so what happened next? You go over there, you're playing basketball for a while. Mm-hmm. And when did you kind of develop a lot of these I guess, principles that you talk about in your work?
It's a good question. So, of course, I was developing them over time, but I wasn't consciously thinking about them. It wasn't until about that 2009 time period, because at that point, I had a little audience online that was slowly growing because I was putting the footage out, and I was playing overseas, and I was writing little articles. I was writing a blog on my website, and I would post it to Facebook and stuff like that for my college friends to see. And it was, number one, the players were asking a little bit about it because they would just ask about, once they saw the videos and they were appreciating it, eventually they started to kind of get more interested in the person who was making the videos.
Right.
So they appreciated the content because it was helping them. But then eventually they're like, well, who is this guy? Who do you play for again? Where do you go to school again? How do you develop your game again? You played what? You played Division III? How you played overseas? How'd that happen? So then they started to get interested after they appreciated the material. So then I started answering their questions and comments, and sometimes I would make just talking head videos, just explaining, well, here's what happened in high school tryouts. Here's why I played D3. All right, I walked on to play college ball. Here's how I walked on, because these players, they were seeing a lot of their own situations in my life. So they started asking how I did what they were trying to do. All right, Dre, you got cut from your high school team the first 3 years, but you made it the last year. What did you do that last year to make the team? They wanted to know. So I would explain that. Okay, Dre, you walked on D3 and you successfully walked on. I want to walk on because nobody's recruiting me to play college either. How do you walk on? So now I make videos about how I walked on. So these little granular things they were asking about. And that's when I started to suss out, because this is really my superpower. I have a really good ability, Robbie, to understand what questions someone really needs to be asking, even if they're not asking it, because they don't even realize that it's the question that they really should be asking me. So I started making more content based on what I know they needed to know as in comparison to what they were actually asking. So that's when I started talking about mindset, about discipline, confidence, mental toughness, taking initiative. And then I started making the weekly motivation videos. I said, I'll just do this every Monday, because the other 6 days a week, I'm making basketball content. One day a week, I'll do this mindset thing. If y'all like this, I'll keep it going. And they said, yeah, keep doing it, keep doing it. And that's when the non-athletes started coming into my world and saying, Dre, this stuff applies to us, and I don't even play sports. So that's how I started to develop it. And then I just needed to figure out what are the pieces here? What's each one of these pieces? And I realized the pieces that I was getting asked about the most. So it was, why do you, or how do you show up to the gym every day and do these workouts and do these practices and do these drills and put these videos on YouTube, even though right now, Dre, you are a free agent in Miami in an empty gym practicing and you don't even know if the phone's going to ring again. That was a discipline. Then it was, okay, well, when I had tryouts, Dre, you practice all year, just like you mentioned, Q school. $5,000 to go to Q school, and Q school is how long? What, a week? 4 days?
Well, there's like 6 rounds, different stages. I never went, but that would be the path to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have all this time that you've invested into getting good at golf, and then you get like a week to prove that you're good enough. And if you quit during that week, then say goodbye to your $5,000, right?
Gotta try again next year. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing with basketball. So you practice all year to get good, and then tryouts, you get 1 day to make it to day 2. If you don't do good on day 1, you don't make it to day 2. So 364 days for 1 day. So how do you have the confidence to perform at that one moment when the lights come on? So I started talking about confidence. That was the second piece. Then it was, okay, well, you tried out for your team 3 years in a row. Now you're going to try out again. Now your parents are telling you maybe you should give up this basketball pipe dream, or your friends are laughing at you because you tried out and didn't make it, or the girls are ridiculing you, or people are just looking at you like you're dumb because you're chasing this quote unquote pipe dream that clearly is not working. Why keep trying? And that's where the mental toughness piece came from. Or even you walked on to play D3, but you're thinking about you're going to play pro basketball. Who plays D3 as a walk-on and thinks they're going to play pro basketball? That's stupid. All right, mental toughness. All right, who gets out of college and still nobody's checking for you to play pro? You work a whole year just to save up some money so you can go to an exposure camp that you're going to pay your own money for the shot that you might get a chance to play pro basketball. Who does that? Again, that was the mental toughness piece. And then, why even do this? How do you even get started doing these things? So you pay the money, you find the exposure camp, you pay the money to go to the exposure camp. First of all, I had to negotiate with the camp because you were supposed to write them a check or bring a credit card. I had neither one. I didn't have a bank account or a credit card. I said, can I pay you in cash at the door? They said, yes. I paid them $250 cash at the door at this exposure camp in Orlando. So, and then I had to negotiate with them for that. Then I get home from the camp, and as I already told you, I cold called agents. Had I not cold called those agents, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, because me going to the exposure camp, I got a good scouting report, but again, nothing happened.
Nothing happens from that.
Right, nothing happened. Only thing that happened was I took the scouting report and said, hey, look at this. All right, sign me. I took the initiative to go make that happen. Then I got on. So that was the personal initiative part. So that's how the 4 pieces came together: discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative.
When did you notice, like, obviously, so you noticed your YouTube videos starting to get traction. I'm sure you were gaining followers at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have 100K or over 100,000 YouTube followers at the moment, right?
Yeah.
And what was the trajectory of the growth on YouTube, and when, if you remember, like what were sort of the, I got to 10,000 followers here and then 50 and then 100. Do you remember?
I have no idea. No, I never even paid attention to the number, honestly.
Really? Okay.
It was when I was it was probably about 2014, 2015. I had connected my channel to one of these. Remember they had those multi-channel networks? I don't know if they still exist, but one of those networks that, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so. Like it was multiple YouTube networks or other social media.
So no, multi-channel network. I don't know what they call them now. I don't know what the word is now because I don't really pay that much attention to YouTube stuff. But it would be a company that would basically work as kind of like a manager for YouTube channels.
Oh, okay.
And they would get a bunch of channels under their umbrella, like an agent for YouTube. And then what they would do is they would go and get brand deals, and they would get a brand deal. Let's say the channel I was with, they would focus on sports. So they would get somebody like me and a bunch of other sports-related people, and then they would go get a brand deal with, let's say, Gatorade. And then Gatorade would do the deal with the network, and then the network would basically divvy up the money, and they would come to me and like 5 other sports guys, and we would make a video about whatever Gatorade wanted, and then we would all get paid from the network based on the deal that they did with Gatorade. So they would basically work as an agent to go get us brand deals. So when I got with them, they're the ones who said to me, Dre, you got over 100,000 subscribers, you can get the little plaque, right? And you see my plaque up there. They're the ones who told me about the plaque. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I know it's a big thing now for YouTubers, but again, I wasn't even paying any attention to that stuff. So I don't know when I hit what numbers. I didn't care, honestly.
That's cool. I mean, that's because people get so obsessed with the metrics and,
right.
Yeah. I have way more followers on TikTok for whatever reason. I mean, I'm in a weird space with dating and whatnot. There's all sorts of, Yeah,
YouTube doesn't like a lot of things that, depending on what they're talking about, you can't talk about it on YouTube.
I'm lucky to still have my channel because, I was posting on there back in 2007, 2008. How many guys I know in the dating space, they were just, deplatformed or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So now they just shadow ban you. They might not kick you off, but they'll just not let your stuff get seen.
Exactly. That's the case. So when you're over in Europe, you're basically making this content. At what point did you kind of retire from basketball and then transition this? How did you make money at it? Were you selling courses to guys who were interested in becoming pro basketball players, and then selling books and courses to people that were more interested in just, improving their game, improving their confidence? Tell me about that transition period, I guess.
I was doing all the above. So everything you said, I was doing it, plus more. So from 2010 to 2015, I was doing the following. I was playing pro basketball. I was also putting videos on YouTube like every day. At that point, from 2010 to 2015, I was putting 2, 3, 4 videos on YouTube a day because I was very popular at that time in the basketball space, and we hadn't yet hit critical mass when everybody started publishing. So there was a bunch of people watching, but not a bunch of people publishing. So it was a great time to be a creator at that time.
But how much time were you putting into editing? Did you have like a team for that? Do it all yourself?
No editing, no team.
Okay.
So I would just record a video, chop it up. If you want to call that editing, I would just chop it up, sync it together in iMovie, and put it on YouTube. There was no editing. So
you do all my shit on iMovie.
The production quality of my videos was zero. But people loved it because I had the right message for the right audience. It was a perfect market to message match. So no editing. And I was putting out 2, 3, 4 videos a day on YouTube. Now at this time, self-publishing was a thing. So I started writing my own books. I was selling training programs to basketball players using YouTube as my lead source. So they were sending me a ton of leads from YouTube videos every day to sell my training programs. And then I had the books. Then I started creating courses. Once I realized the mindset stuff was useful, I started creating courses based on mindset. I was selling those. Then eventually, probably about 2015, around the time that I stopped playing, that's when I got into coaching and professional speaking.
Got it. Okay. And were they?
And brand deals. I forgot the brand deals. I was doing those too.
Yeah. Explain basically how you were juggling all those things. So you've done a few TEDx talks, right? And are those paid engagements, or TED is free and then you just get the?
TED is unpaid.
Okay. Were you getting, was there significant, revenue coming in or income coming in from like paid speaking engagements, or were you mostly doing those as a way to promote your?
I didn't start doing paid speaking until I stopped playing basketball. So it wasn't until 2015 I started doing speaking, because that was the next thing that I was going to replace basketball with, was speaking.
Right. Got it. Okay. So you're doing a mixture of selling courses, speaking, brand deals,
books, training programs, ad revenue, and brand deals. That's right.
And still no team at this point.
No team. No
team. And now, how big's your team?
I have an audio team in the Philippines, and I have an executive assistant who's based in the Philippines. That's it.
Nice. I'm the same way. I have an editor. That's about it. They call us, I guess, solopreneurs. And anytime I've ever tried to hire people, maybe I'm just a bad boss or something, but it's never been necessary, I guess, for my business. And as a creator of content now, and as a coach, I find that with all the tools I can find online to, have people in my Discord community and get, reels out on social media and everything, it's like you barely even need a team anymore. So
do you have aspirations of having a team or expanding?
I would prefer to never have a team and obviously grow my brand. But if I can continue doing it all, as lean as possible, that's my preference.
Now, see, my approach is different. So I have my team is not that big, but I do have aspirations of expanding my team. So I have an executive assistant in the Philippines, and she can handle a certain amount of things. But when it comes to stuff like the consulting work and training and speaking, where I'm working with businesses that are based in America, especially when you're traveling to them and things, I eventually will expand to where I have an American executive assistant who is in charge of things, because they can get on the phone. Yeah. They can make phone calls and they can close deals for me. So I want a person who can do that. I also am going to need they call an integrator. I was talking to this guy. He's an entrepreneur. He probably does $15 million a year. He has 3 different businesses. And he was telling me, like, Dre, your next step. So he was saying, Dre, 4 years ago, I was where you are. And he was just explaining to me, like, so then the next thing is you get an integrator, and the integrator can take all the ideas you have, and they can actually make sure that they get implemented the right way. Doesn't mean they do it, but they go hire the person for this and this and this. So I got a lot of things that I want to do. I probably got a list of about 150 things that need to happen in my business that I'm not going to do myself. But we need to hire the people or the software or a person to oversee all that stuff and get that expanded on. So I do want to expand and do other things in business. Is just piece by piece. We just need to get these pieces moving, but we want to do it quickly. Now, as far as your hiring challenge, so since you mentioned it, I did an episode on my show actually about that. And one of the biggest challenges a lot of people have with hiring is that their sourcing is sucky. So it's kind of like when you have a whole bunch of bad prospects for your coaching programs, because the marketing is off. So whenever I get a bunch of bad prospects from my coaching programs, because something in my marketing is attracting those people. And it's the same thing with hiring. If you put out a bad proposal for who you want, then you get the wrong prospects and you hire the wrong person, then you got to get rid of them. So it is always sourcing back. I'm always deconstructing, figuring out what led to this issue.
Yeah, I feel like it comes back to sort of making sure you have the right message for the right audience. And it sounds like that's something you've been able to nail pretty consistently in your career. Sometimes, yeah.
I messed it up. Yeah.
That's always a challenge, right? It's finding that product market fit, I guess you could say.
That's right.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about, so right now, are you coaching, do you coach people? Like, do guys come to you, big sort of, did you ever get first of all, do you do any coaching with individual clients, or you do? Okay. Mm-hmm. And tell me what that sort of like coaching looks like, and how much of your time do you set aside for like content creation, coaching? How do you manage all of these different sort of balls that you're juggling?
So when it comes to the coaching, we work with top level performers. So I tell people top 2% performers are the people we're looking for, people who are practicing slight edge, which is basically they know that there are certain things that they did in order to get to this higher level, and they understand they need to keep investing in it in order to stay at the high level. So those are the people we best like working with, because I always tell people the best coaches have the best players. All right. So Phil Jackson was a genius because he had Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. It's not because he was just a genius. He couldn't turn some bums into champions. They were already pretty damn good. So those are the type of people who we like to work with as far as coaching goes. And coaching, actually, when we're working with high level performers, the interesting thing, Robbie, is that it's a paradoxical thing, is that they need less oversight than the lower level performers. Right? The lower the level of the performer, the more their time and attention and energy they need from you. So it's funny, you wouldn't think that, but that's exactly how it happens. So our coaching doesn't really take that much time, but I would put more time into coaching. And the more time we can put into coaching, because we offer high ticket coaching, we take the resources from that and then we put it into those other pieces I was talking about, hiring other people, implementing, and just prioritizing what's the first task we want to do, what's the next one, getting the right people in place. And then all we do is pour those resources that we get from those implementations into going and getting more high ticket business coming in. Now, as far as the other part of your question, which was the content creation, it doesn't take me a lot of time to create content. So the things that I do consistently, I have a solo show that I put out every day. So we make sure that we're recording that. My episodes are only about 20 minutes a piece. So I make sure I record at least 8 episodes a week, so we always can at least sandbag an extra 1 or more. And then writing, I write every single day. So that's the other thing I got to do every day, make sure I'm writing articles. That doesn't take me but maybe 20 minutes a day. Then as far as the stuff we post on social, I don't touch any of that. So I record the audio for my show, upload that to Google Drive, record the video, upload that to Google Drive or as a draft in YouTube. My audio team takes care of that. My executive assistant takes care of everything else. So everything you see on social media, I made it, but I don't post it. So they know how to follow. I make the processes. I document everything. We have 150 documented processes. So all they have to do is follow the documentation. They do it a few times. They understand it, and they take care of it.
So real quick, if you've ever gotten any value from the show and you have some wingmen or buddies that you think would get value too, I want to make a request. Let them know. Simply ask the bros in your life if they've ever heard of this podcast, and if not, send them the episode. That way, they're going to learn exactly what you're learning right now, and it could help you cultivate a perfect wingman. If you decide to go as far as tagging me and sharing me on social media, please let me know, and be sure to tag me at Robbie_Kramer, and I would love to say hi. Shoot me a line. So that's my only ask today. If you've ever gotten value here, please spread the word. All right, let's get back to the show. So you developed the systems, which is
absolutely
the whole
that's right.
Kit and caboodle, I guess, as they say. You develop the systems, that way you can offload it, and that's
exactly.
how you manage to run it more.
Yeah, we can systematize everything. So the more that we get systematized, the less I have to do.
Right. So switching gears a little bit, what did your sort of dating and social life look like once you graduated, started playing pro ball, moved to Europe? Tell me about that.
Well, I will tell you I'm married now. I have a child. So, but before that, once I started playing overseas, it was pretty much doing things the same way I did in college. So we would, you play your sport, you do your necessary work, and we would go out at night, clubs, partying, meet girls, whatever. And that was what my dating life was like.
Did you find that
specifically?
What derailed most of my professional aspirations was I just got too interested in girls. Even one of my high school coaches called that out. He was, because my junior year qualified for like the state championship, and I was probably the best ever at golf. What's that?
It was high school or college?
In high school. In high school, and I was 16. And then got a girlfriend for the first time, and then basically became like, really interested in women and having fun and partying. And that really derailed my golf career. Most of us in college, I played D2, and we were basically a combination of what you explained between D3 and D1. If some of the guys were out there practicing and working on their game, at the required time to become pro, while as, guys like me and I'd practice maybe sort of in the middle, but not nearly as hard as I even practice now. But what I found is that it's when you're single
it's very hard to find guys who can both manage their social life and their dating life, and also whatever their passion is, whatever their career thing is. I find that a lot of guys have trouble kind of focusing on both, so they end up kind of focusing on one and letting the other thing go to a degree. And I'm curious if you saw that for yourself or from some of your other teammates.
Well, the first thing is, all males need to understand, is women are time consuming. It's time consuming to be single and out there dating, because you have to spend a certain amount of time with a female to further whatever the relationship is, wherever it's going to go. It just takes time. There's a time investment. And every minute that you're spending doing that, you're not doing your business or your career or your sport. And so whatever it's going to be. So this is, I 100% understand how that can happen to somebody, especially when you're trying to play a sport. So the focus for me was always on the sport. And what I would tell people this, whether we're talking about dating or anything else you may want to pursue that is not the main thing, is to flip it around, flip the equation around. Is kind of like, and this is the example that I use somebody like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, or maybe you use, I guess, Tiger Woods in golf. I don't know his story as deeply, but probably a prize. That, let's say Michael Jordan, most athletes these days, what do you see them focus on? They're focused on building their brand, getting a bunch of followers on social media. If they're not in a committed relationship, they're out, chasing the girls, or not chasing them, but having the girls chase them. And then you still got to invest time. Even if the girls are chasing you, it's still time, time investment. And doing as many business deals as you can. The athletes have sneakers and they got clothing lines, and they're doing all these other businesses that have nothing to do with the main thing that they do. And because they're putting their resources into these other things, they can't be putting their full focus into the sport, or as much of it as they could, because every resource that you divert into your brand, into your clothing line, into your business, into your the community stuff you're doing, into the girls, that's a minute that you're not spending on the main thing that made you who you are in the first place. So you look at someone like Michael Jordan, he says this all the time. Anyone who reads his interviews or his articles or his books, one of the things he emphasizes, he doesn't try to emphasize it, but he has no choice because it just comes out of him. He said, I put my full focus into being the best basketball player I could be. He says it over and I read every Michael Jordan interview there is. And he says it every time. And he said, he was on an interview not too long ago, because he doesn't do many interviews. He doesn't do press. Okay. But he was in his cigar magazine. I was in an auto dealership, and they had a cigar magazine on the desk. And I read that Michael Jordan interview, and he said, it would be unfair to compare how I prepared for basketball in my day to how the players prepare these days, because none of them puts their full focus into the game the way that I did. It would be unfair to even compare me to them. Yeah. And he's saying it in a humble way. And I'm saying all that, Robbie, to say this, that someone like Michael Jordan, with all the players trying to get all the stuff that they learned from seeing Michael Jordan have it, right? Because he made more money than any athlete. Michael Jordan made more money than any athlete, yet he was only focused on being the best player he could be. So people really think about, what does that mean? All he was focused on was being the best player he could be, and he still got all the money. Whereas the players playing today are trying to focus on doing everything else instead of just being the best player they could be. Whereas if you just flip the equation around and maximize on the golden goose, it will lay so many golden eggs that you don't even have to chase after the eggs. These days, the players are chasing the eggs instead of taking care of the goose. And I try to explain that. I try to emphasize that as much as I can whenever I think of someone like Mike or Kobe Bryant qualifies also. Tom Brady qualifies. Tiger Woods, I would think, qualifies. But there's so few of them because everybody else is trying to go get all the things. Once you just do the main thing, all the things will come to you. You don't have to go after them.
Yeah. Well, Tiger has an interesting story where he basically did exactly as you said. And then in 2008, he had basically that huge sex scandal come out. And
his development was arrested.
Yeah. And that completely derailed his career. He didn't win another major. He won the 2008 US Open, and then he didn't win another major until the 2019 Masters. Right. And do you have any thoughts on on that? Maybe you don't know the details or whatever, but from my opinion on that is, I think he probably, I knew he was kind of like a nerd in college and whatnot, and he probably didn't get the, kind of exposure to all the fun and the partying that he, should have got at a young age, and
right.
push that back and push that back, and then kind of maybe went overboard with it and got himself into all those messes with all those chicks. I don't know, but that's kind of my idea of it.
Yeah, a couple things on that. Did you read the books on Tiger?
I have not the ones from that.
So I read a couple of books on Tiger Woods. Well, not by him, but books about him, his life, these guys. And their biographies are really good ways to learn about people, because when people write their own books, they leave things out. But when someone else writes a book about you, they give you all the details. So the books about Tiger are really good. And it was one, I got to find it. I'll recommend it to you if you want to read it. And also, did you see the Tiger Woods documentary? I think it was on either Netflix or HBO. Did you see that one?
How long ago was that? I know I saw something.
It was a few years, maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
And they had they talked about his dad and how his dad was doing, because his dad was canoeing on the golf course, and Tiger would see him doing it. And that planted the seeds for what Tiger did. So
okay, maybe I didn't see that.
Tiger's dad obviously taught him how to golf. Everybody knows that.
Right.
And Tiger's dad worked on the golf course, so he was like, I'm going to make my son a golfer. And Tiger's dad, Earl, was a golf pro at the local course. And then there was another golf pro, this white guy there, and Earl and that golf pro were friends. And they would be doing all types of stuff with the women on the golf course. And Tiger was a young boy watching his dad and this other golf pro do all that. And that planted the seed for what Tiger became.
Wow.
So they set the stage for that when he was a very young boy, because you're watching your dad do that. And you're on the golf course all the time. And then the other thing was, if you watch that documentary, Tiger was a normal kid for a while. Like when he was in high school, he'd be playing around with other kids. He had a girlfriend. And it was a really sad part of the documentary, because he had this girl that he was with, and he was messing around with her, and his parents made him break up with the girl, and he had to write the girl a letter, and he said, I never want to see you again. I can't see you again. And he would never see the girl. The girl tried to call him, tried to visit him, and he would not see her, because his parents said him being with this girl is going to ruin everything. If he gets this girl pregnant, or he's too focused on girls, he's not going to golf enough, and he won't become a great golfer. His parents set him up for that. Wow. So his development was completely arrested. And as you said, to get back to the part that you said, he never got a chance to experience that social life, because his growth as a child was never allowed, because he was always sheltered to the golf course. So then it's funny, because it comes back around to Michael Jordan. So when Tiger became really famous, obviously he was the guy in the early 2000s.
Right.
He's hanging with Michael Jordan, who at that time was still coming off the heat of being the guy in sports. So there was a story, he was hanging in like Vegas, and he's with Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley, and these guys they're known for partying and spending a lot of money, and they're at a club in VIP. And it's Michael, Charles Barkley, Tiger Woods. And Tiger's like, he's seeing all these people are looking at them in the VIP, because all the girls know who they are. And Tiger's like, well, these girls are coming up to me, Michael, what do? I don't know what to say to these girls, because he didn't have the experience. And Michael Jordan laughed at him and said, all you got to do is say, I'm Tiger Woods. And you get with who you want. And people in the documentary, the woman that actually ended up breaking the whole thing, or how it got broken, the whole sex scandal, was his wife found out that he was texting with the girl who was a VIP hostess in Vegas. That was the girl that's how his wife found out. Then everything else came out after that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. I remember she came, and then there was 8 others. And then of course, a bunch of others who probably didn't even know him, but claimed that. So, it's fascinating. I got to watch that documentary, because I must have seen something else that was more golf related, but this is.
Yeah. Cool. I got to find that book. I'll tell you the name of the book in a second. I'll find it.
Oh, nice. Well, dude, this has been awesome. Where can people, who are listening to this, find out about you? Anything you want to promote or let the listeners or viewers be aware of?
Sure. I'll let people get a free copy of my book, The Third Day. Can I share that?
Of course.
Yeah. So this is my book right here, The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. And this is, I did one of my TED Talks on this, and this is one of the concepts that I developed, just as a player. Still talk about it now to the professionals and the entrepreneurs. So it spans over, it's a universal topic. It's all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. And this book is about how to systematically and strategically show up and deliver, even on those days when the energy's not there, the motivation is not there, but you still have to do your job, which is what a professional must do. So you get a free copy. Just go to thirddaybook.com. The book is free. We will take All we ask is that you take care of the shipping. Just go to thirddaybook.com. We'll send you a free physical copy, paperback version of this book. And as far as everything else, I'm on all the socials, at Dre Baldwin on Instagram. It's probably my most active platform, but I'm on everything else as well.
Amazing. I'm going to grab a copy of that book because I have some aspirations to potentially go pro in golf on the senior tour level. So I've got about eight years to get my game in shape and do it. So
okay, so you're going to go for it.
Yeah, now that I'm married, no longer in the the game of chasing women, or as you said, having to chase me, because that was my that was my whole thing, is build a system so you don't have to hunt for women, instead they hunt for you.
Right.
I find myself with all this time where I'm no longer doing all the single stuff, and I was living in Ukraine and traveling all over the world, and basically kind of being like an international playboy, I guess you could say. But now that I'm not doing that, I've become obsessed with golf again, and my wife is also obsessed with golf. We've been growing our little social media accounts as a golf couple. We're trying to build our influencer sort of brand as that. And
here's the book. It's called Tiger Woods.
Oh, nice. All right. Audio.
Armin Catane and Jeff Benedict. So I listened to the audio. I thought I read the physical, but I got the audio.
I'm going to definitely do that. Listen to that. So yeah, I now have the drive and the desire to practice more than I ever have. I'll spend 4 or 5 hours a day working on my swing and short game and all those things. In college, I just didn't care. I was,
Right. So let me ask you a question, because actually I meant to ask you this when I first heard you say it. So I had a teammate in college who was on the basketball team, but before the basketball team, he was actually on the golf team. He only played on the basketball team, I think, last year. But before that, when he first came to school, he came into college to play golf. And he said he had to get off the golf team because he was about to flunk out of school, because the number one dropout sport in college sports is golf, because of the amount of hours required to practice. Do you know anything about that? Ever heard that?
Meaning they were dropping out because they were practicing too much and they weren't studying?
Yeah, he was saying that of all the sports that college, the NCAA has, the number one dropout rate is the golf team, because of the amount of hours of practice.
Yeah, there were so many guys in the team that were like almost academically ineligible, because they had to keep a GPA of at least 2.0, and I was at San Diego, which is a pretty good school. I was recruited to play golf. I had a good GPA in high school, but I don't know if I would have got in just based on the GPA. And a lot of the other recruits, they weren't the most academic guys, and they were like barely, staying eligible. And yeah, there's so much time, because we had practice 5 days a week. 3 of those days it was playing, which takes 5 hours. You got to drive to the course. You got an hour to warm up, and then it's very hard to have time to fit in classes and to do the practice necessary. And not only that, but for whatever reason, golf, you don't think of golfers as partiers, but most golfers are alcoholics. And the amount of drinking and partying and just like, you're playing golf, it's like, yeah, I can have a beer. I could have some, like our coach would get drunk with us at tournaments. It was pretty crazy.
I have some coaching clients who are golfers, so I know about it. They tell me how they, on golf courses, again, this is a walk through a park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a couple sticks and some beers and some food, and
a lot of guys, I know some pro golfers that could only play, if they were high on weed, or if they had, had like 3 or 4 beers, or, so they'd be sneaking shots, in the, at the halfway house, right? Taking it.
I've heard about that. It seems like a good place to drink. I've never really golfed, but it seems like a good time, and it's a good way to get away from the family, the kids, the wife, and just hang with your buddies.
Totally. And when you're more relaxed on the golf course, those few drinks, it's gonna a lot of the time help your game. So that's well, Dre, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and really enjoyed this conversation. So for everyone else listening, grab the book. I'm gonna grab it.
Much appreciated, Robbie. I appreciate you sharing your platform and giving me the opportunity. So I'm looking forward to hearing your audience's response to this conversation.
For sure. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're a regular listener and you're digging our content, do me a favor, leave us a 5-star review. It's how other people learn about the show and how we can spread the word. If you don't feel like it's worthy of 5 stars, just go ahead, don't leave any review at all. And I want to let you know that we've opened up a few slots in our exclusive community. We're accepting applications to join our select group of men and experience the radical power of accountability, step up your game, cross everything off your sexual bucket list, and become a beast at accomplishing all of your goals. To learn more and apply, go to innerconfidence.com/community.